might scream, so get ready. It didn't, surprisingly. All right. I'd like to get started because we have a lot to cover. I want to finish up nervous system today, which is a big, lofty goal. Okay. So one thing I wanted to sort of cover one more time is what happens with action potentials in the neuron. Okay, what is the fate of action potentials in the neuron, starting with greater potentials and ending with neurotransmitter release. So what's happening with potentials in the neurons? I kind of want to summarize that for you. So potentials in neuron. Okay, so I'm going to draw a quick diagram for this, and then we're going to move on and discuss the brain a little bit further, and then on to the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so when you look at what's going on, so if this were the cell body, right, and then we've got the axon, okay, and then we've got the axon terminals. I'm going to draw it like this. Right? And I'm going to draw the nucleus just to give you an idea. That's the cell body. And understand that the cell body has all these dendrites. Okay? So you have all these dendrites. And what is happening is, remember that neurotransmitters are binding neurotransmitter receptors. Okay? NTRs, neurotransmitter receptors. And then you have graded potentials, right? So you've got, so going into the cell body, are graded potentials, GP, graded potentials are going in. And remember, if they summate, in other words, if they add, so understand that some neurotransmitters are excitatory, some neurotransmitters are inhibitory, correct?
Yes.
So remember, we went through all this. I hope you've been keeping up. So some neurotransmitters are inhibitory, some neurotransmitters are excitatory, and when you have multiple of these coming together simultaneously, you have spatial summation. Spatial summation. Hello, good morning. Spatial summation.
Yes.
If you have one neurotransmitter, then that's a temporal summation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you got spatial summation here, and if they add up at the axon hillock, which is this part right here, so that's the axon hillock, and that's an important part. So axon hillock is where you find voltage-gated channels first, and if you generate action potentials here, okay, so if action potentials are generated here, action potentials are conducted all along the axon, correct?
Yes.
So I want to quickly discuss that. So axon potential, okay. So what happens to action potentials along the axon? So along the axon, you have non-myelinated portions, okay, called nodes, help propagate action potentials, okay, and refractory periods make sure that this happens in a unidirectional fashion. So because you have refractory periods, you make sure that action potentials can only move in one direction, because the previous segment is still refractory, right?
Yes.
So you don't have a choice. So the action potential in one node becomes the stimulus for the action potential in the next node. Are we clear?
Yes.
So it's self-propagating, okay? So action potential in one node, okay, stimulates action potential in the next node. Okay, so if I have to draw this, okay, it kind of looks like this, right? So if you had, so again, this is myelin sheath, okay? So the black covering is myelin sheath, right?
Yes.
So if you had an action potential here, right? This serves as a stimulus to open sodium channels in the next node. Are we clear?
Yes.
So then you get action potentials here. So action potential pretty much jumps from one node to the other.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening in the previous node, so once you have, again, after this thing has happened, right? And again, you have the myelin sheath here. So you got the action potential here. Remember that this is refractory. So the signal cannot jump back. In other words, this cannot happen. That cannot happen. Are we clear?
Yes.
So refractory periods ensure the unidirectionality of the action potential. I will ask this on the exam. Refractory periods, the main job of refractory periods is to make sure that the action potential propagates in one primary direction, at least in the neuron. And that's exactly what happens here. And if you have a myelinated axon, and tell me, will that be a short axon or a long axon? Long, usually very long axons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you have a myelinated axon, you will end up doing what's called saltatory conduction. Okay, and if you have an unmyelinated axon, now tell me, will that be short or long? Short, right? Like BART trains, right? Short distance. So it will be short. And what function do they usually perform? You can evaluate this for yourself. If you don't know the answer, you're not studying, okay? Or you're not studying enough, okay? So, because this is something I repeated many times over. If you have short axons, they're ideal for what function? Processing, okay, good. So these would be interneurons that are important for processing. They're interneurons. Interneurons are often unmyelinated or very lightly myelinated. So if you have unmyelinated short axons, this conduction is called a continuous conduction. So conduction is continuous. Okay? So very, very important point, continuous versus saltatory. So the graded potential translating into action potential, and then the action potential moving through the axon. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay, last step is what happens at the very end. What happens at the axon terminal? So this is your axon terminal. So what happens at the axon terminal? Again, I want to go over that quickly because it's a very, very important concept that I did not teach. Okay, so axon terminal. So at the axon terminal, your action potentials arrive, right? Look at this diagram. The action potential arrives here, yes?
Yes.
Everyone sees that. So you're seeing that the action potential comes here.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, what's happening there? So what is happening here is the following. So action potential arrives. Okay. Voltage gated sodium channels open like usual, which means depolarization, correct?
Yes.
Once you have depolarization, that will open voltage gated calcium channels. Now, voltage gated calcium channels are unique to the axon terminal. You will not find them anywhere else. You will not find voltage gated calcium channels anywhere else in the neuron. You will find them only in the axon terminal. Because anytime calcium comes in, I told you 2 or 3 things happen. What things happen when calcium comes in? Cell transport. Calcium comes in, your cytoskeleton becomes activated. If cytoskeleton becomes activated, what type of transport are you going to do? Bulk, thank you. Bulk transport, right? Exocytosis or secretion, or endocytosis or taking something in. Remember, the cytoskeleton is the train track, right?
Yes.
On which these vesicles travel, right? So calcium influx can set in motion either secretion or endocytosis. Calcium influx will change the shape of the cell because the cytoskeleton changes the shape of the cell. Or calcium coming in will depolarize, right? Makes sense. Calcium is a 2+ ion. Of course you're going to depolarize, right? So these are all very important changes that happen when calcium comes in. It's a big deal. In neurons, when calcium comes in, you will release neurotransmitters by bulk transport. You will release neurotransmitters by bulk transport. This is why pregnant women crave chocolate. Even when normally in her non-pregnant state, a woman might not like chocolate, but when she's pregnant, she will want milk products and chocolate, and she'll crave these things because the baby, which is a parasite biologically, is taking all her calcium. This is also why women go through mood swings during pregnancy, because when calcium gets taken up by the parasite, what happens to the mother? She can't secrete neurotransmitters that keep her in balance, right? Yes. So that imbalance can cause severe depression. Same thing happens during postpartum. The parasite takes all her calcium through milk. Correct? Yes. Very logical and obvious. How many men have thought about this? Right. So, important. How many women have thought about this? You don't know the mechanism. So, here, now you learn the mechanism. Now this is powerful knowledge. Now you pass it on to all your daughters, men and women, to make sure she understands that this is all physiological. Is that clear? Yes. Very, very important. This also explains why in many species, right after giving birth, some, very few, but some mothers get so upset that they kill all their young ones. They get really irritated, and because that has to do with neurotransmitter imbalance. Is that clear? The violence, right? Voltage-gated channels open, calcium channels open. This leads to exocytosis of neurotransmitters. So take a look at this and tell me if this is making sense. Or can I clarify anything there? And people in the last row, you can see this? Yeah, okay. Thursday class, you have your exam on Thursday. I've completely forbidden the Tuesday class from discussing any aspect of the exam with you. So if you have any concern for them, you should not go ask them, how did your exam go? You do not do that. I'm not recycling my exam, but when I say don't discuss it, don't discuss it, okay? When I have two separate lab sections, it's a matter of principle. So do not ask the Tuesday section how it went. It's completely irrelevant. Every single person gets a different exam. Okay, so do not discuss it with Tuesday class. The answers will be out Friday morning, okay, and then you can always come talk to me about it, okay, and I have office hours Friday night, so if you want to sit down and discuss what you got wrong, why, and so on, I'll be happy to do it Friday night, okay, but till then, hush is the word, okay. Make sure your lockdown is working. I gave you a practice exam to practice lockdown. That's the main purpose of that practice exam. Please make sure your lockdown browser works. It's very possible I don't have a spare computer. If I don't have a spare computer, bye-bye exam grade. Okay, I'm not giving you a makeup on this. Because this is just you being irresponsible. Do you understand? Yes. You're not following my instructions. So make sure you practice the lockdown browser. Okay? It's under quizzes. So if you go to quizzes, you have a practice quiz. Practice that. Make sure your lockdown browser works with that. So when you come in, make sure your lockdown browser works. It's scheduled at 11:15. 11:15. If you're late, it's not the end of the world. I'm giving you an hour and a half. Most of the Tuesday's class finished it in an hour. Okay, most of them finished it in an hour. It won't take you an hour and a half, but I'm giving you an hour and a half. Okay, you have that full time to do it, and then you're going to be doing the sensory lab, which I don't think a lot of the class was able to finish, but that's okay, because next week you get some free time after the lecture exam to catch up. Okay, you can finish up that lab at that time. Are we clear? Yes. We will have lecture next Thursday. I mean, not this Thursday. Next Thursday, yeah. When you have your lecture exam, afterwards you will have lecture. I do need to cover muscle physiology. Okay. Our schedule is very tight. I can't afford to give up lecture periods. Are there any questions on this? Yes.
During lab, you said that the exam will be at 12. Was it moved to 11:15?
It's back to our original schedule. Because the accommodations, because 103A is taking their lab exam, and I have 2 accommodation students there who need an extra hour. So I figured I'll do that, and the dean told me that that's illegal. I can't do that. I can't cut into your class period and give you an hour off. And also, I can't do that lab any other time. So what I did was I made them come an hour early, and they can take the exam an hour early, and I should not be sacrificing an entire period for once. The dean is completely right. She was totally right. I shouldn't be sacrificing a whole class period for one student. The student has to cooperate and come early. And the student is, so no problem. That got settled. So we will start your lab exam on time at 11:15. Are we clear?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I did say it's going to be at noon because I had this issue. Okay, but no, it's going to start at 11:15. Everybody got that announcement?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. John.
What does the saltatory mean in saltatory conductor?
Salta in Latin means leaping, jumping. Okay, so saltatory means jumping around. And that's the same word in Spanish. I saw it on Dora. Right? Yeah. What is it, Dora?
So in Physio X, when calcium influxed, it said that calcium ions would bind onto vesicles that carry the neurotransmitters. But
Calcium ions can't carry nothing. They're tiny little ions.
The vesicles.
Yeah, the vesicles containing the neurotransmitters will start moving because the vesicles are stuck on the cytoskeleton, right? And then the cytoskeleton starts moving. So it's not really like a train, right? For a train, the track doesn't move, right? But in the cell, it's the track that moves, not the vesicle. A lot of animations will show you that the vesicle's walking. Okay, that's not possible. Where is it getting the energy from to do that? The cytoskeleton moves.
And then the release of those vesicles are predetermined by the frequency of the action potential, right?
I don't know why you're harping on this since 10 years ago. Okay, so the question is, if you didn't hear him, the question is, does the frequency of action potentials determine how much neurotransmitters come out? Is that what you're asking? No. Okay? It completely depends on how much calcium comes in. Is that making sense? And that's complicated because that has to do with how long the calcium channels remain open. Are we clear? And it depends on how many vesicles you got, because that can also vary with time. Nothing is a constant. So don't think that neurons are just sitting there, right? They're very dynamic cells, right? So the amount of neurotransmitters can vary, which is why you feel elated and depressed at different times of the day. Make sense? So does the frequency of neurotransmitters matter? Remember, it's literally a matchstick, right? Whether you burn the whole building down or whether you just burn me down, it depends on how much of gasoline each of us is doused in. If the building is all gasoline, then yeah, the whole thing is going to burn down, right? But if it's just me, then I'm the one who's going to burn. Fun thoughts. I prefer that to grading. Anyway, is that making sense? The voltage-gated sodium channel is simply an ignition switch. Are we clear? Right? So my only, and take this with a huge grain of salt, this is completely my speculation. My speculation is, if the frequency of action potentials are that much greater, so let's say you have two situations. One where frequency of action potentials is lower and frequency of action potentials is greater. Actually, most of the time, frequency of action potentials along the axon is quite constant. Especially when you're talking the tail end of the axon. Am I making sense? It may be more at the beginning. Because remember, you're doing summation, right? And once you do summation and the action potential is already turned on, right? Action potentials do not really reflect the magnitude of the stimulus at the axon hillock, right? And at the axon hillock, you have limited number of sodium channels. Are we clear? So the bottom line is, if you have a significant difference in frequency, right? If you have much higher frequency, right? You have to produce a huge difference here, okay? Then my prediction would be you will have more calcium channels open for longer. And more neurotransmitters could be released. But you need a significantly strong change in frequency. Am I making sense? It cannot happen for mild frequencies changes. here I am screaming my vocal cords out and you're talking to each other.
Sorry.
Did you understand what I said?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You were talking to this one over here. The point I'm trying to make is, my prediction is, if frequency is going to be a factor, okay? If frequency is going to be a factor, it better be a huge difference in frequency. Because when that much calcium comes in, you're really endangering precipitation with phosphate. Are we clear? That's always a problem. So if you want to let that much calcium in, right, you're going to have a problem inside the neuron. So that's what I'm saying. You better have a very, very strong stimulus for that to happen. Everybody got this? Okay. So, any other questions? Okay. So we went over all of this. We went over we went over the cerebral hemispheres, right? The cerebral cortex. So I want to very quickly go over, again, this idea of gray matter. So gray matter is mostly cell bodies, and they're gray because they have mitochondria. Mitochondria appear gray, okay, under the microscope. So gray matter looks dark, okay, because of mitochondria. Mitochondria has copper in it, okay, and that's going to stain with a certain color. So these are usually cell bodies. And white matter, okay, is usually myelinated axons, and technically unmyelinated axons. If you have unmyelinated axons, they're going to appear white as well, right? Because they don't have anything on them, right? They look kind of transparent. So myelinated axons mostly, okay? So there are two ways in which you can organize gray matter, okay? So two ways in which you can organize gray matter, okay? So gray matter can be continuous. Gray matter can be continuous. For example, the cerebral cortex and the spinal cord, okay? Both of these places, the gray matter is continuous. You don't really see a big break, right?
Yeah.
So continuous arrangement. So cerebral cortex is an example, okay? Or they can be arranged as nuclei. Gray matter can be arranged as nuclei or ganglia, okay? They're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. So nuclei are found in the central nervous system, and ganglia are found in the peripheral nervous system. Now, basal ganglia in the brain is a misnomer. They should not have named it like that. It should be called basal nuclei, not basal ganglia. It's a wrong way of naming things. So if you're a group of cell bodies in the central nervous system, you're called a nucleus. And again, anatomy should have taught you this if you've taken that. And if you have groups of cells in the peripheral nervous system, that will be referred to as ganglia. Okay? I'm going to be using these words a lot in a few minutes. Okay, so now, what is my point? My point is the subcortical. What does that mean? Subcortical? Below the cortex, right? Below the cerebral cortex. So subcortical gray matter is organized as nuclei. Okay, and this includes the basal nuclei. This includes many different groups of neurons, each of which has a special function to perform. Are we clear? So they're all grouped by function. Are we clear? So if you're stimulating something, you're going to stimulate a very specific nucleus. Are we clear? And so, for example, visual reflexes, right? You will activate certain nuclei, right? It's called the Westphal nucleus, right? And that nucleus is only concerned with visual reflexes. Something whizzing by, or you see a lightning on the side of the window, right? Scares you, right? So those type of reflex activities. So subcortical gray matter is organized as nuclei. Also, if you look at the hindbrain, it's all nuclei. Look, besides the cerebral cortex and the spinal cord, everything is organized as nucleus. Are we clear? Yes. You want nuclear organization because each nucleus has a characteristic function. Okay? This is how the brain functionally compartmentalizes itself. Does everyone understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The brain has compartments of functions, right? You're doing that primarily by arranging them as nuclei. Is this clear?
Mhm.
Okay. So if you look at the hindbrain, right? When you look at the thalamus, for example, so thalamus is a sensory junction. Thalamus is organized as nuclei. Okay. Hypothalamus organized as nuclei. Okay. Medulla oblongata, nuclei. Pons, nuclei. For example, in the pons, you have a nucleus for breathing patterns. In the pons, you have a nucleus for whether you want to urinate or not. Okay, it's called the pontine storage nucleus and the pontine voiding nucleus. Okay, and then in the medulla, you have cardiovascular nuclei, right? You have some that relate cardiomotor, vascular motor, right? So you have all of these regulatory nuclei. Each nucleus has a unique function. Does everybody get the idea?
Mhm.
Now, what does each nucleus do? We'll cover them as we cover all the important body systems, okay? I'm not going to cover them now. You don't need to know them now. You will know them as the semester rolls along, but you should understand what a nucleus means. Everybody got that?
Yes.
Okay. So, any questions on, again, I'm going to just list some of the parts of the brain just for reference. I will not test you on these. Are we clear? I'm not going to test you on this because we don't know the physiology. Okay? We can only guess, right? So if you come to the subcortical, it's all association areas, and once you get further down into the association areas, you have the fornix, and you have memory, right? Hippocampus, fornix, amygdala, and the basal nuclei there. Okay. The main purpose of the basal nuclei is to filter unnecessary movement. The fact that you're sitting like this without a problem, right, is because your basal nuclei work, and there are 5 of them, okay? You don't need to know those, that's all anatomy, you don't need to know those. But they're very, very important in inhibiting inappropriate movement. And in Parkinson's, one of the nucleus goes bad, right? One of the 5 nuclei goes bad. And that causes people to have tremors. Is that clear? So you see tremors there. And then when you come down to the thalamus is a sensory junction. That's why I'm not writing all this down, because I'm not going to test you on these. I'm just filling you in for completeness sake. So thalamus is all sensory junction, okay? All the sensory information, with the exception of smell, all the sensory information has to go through the thalamus. It's an obligatory stop, okay? And information goes there, and then the thalamus sorts out the information. And how does it sort it out? It activates the appropriate nucleus. If it's a visual signal, the visual nucleus is activated. If it's a hearing, then the hearing nucleus is activated. And they all have different neuron tracks to go to different areas of the brain. Are we clear? Okay. Hypothalamus I am going to write down because this is super important. So the hypothalamus, there is not a thing that the hypothalamus doesn't regulate. Everything from sleep to satiety, to hunger, to sex drive, to sexual development, to body metabolism, to body temperature, to heart rate, okay, to blood pressure, to water balance, including the kind of dreams you have, okay? It's all regulated by the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is, most importantly, okay, this is your emotion, okay, body connection. Okay, very, very important. And people may think that seems pretty specific, not really. This is as generic as it gets, okay? So when somebody feels stressed out and they ease their stress by eating, the problem is with the hypothalamus. So when somebody stress eats and you do an MRI, the hypothalamus lights up like you will not believe. Same goes with happiness. Same goes with content. Same goes with sexual arousal, right? Same goes with just about anything, okay? The hypothalamus is extremely, extremely important, which is why it's at the geometric center of the brain, okay? It is so well protected because it is the most important part of the brain. Are we clear?
Yes.
The most important part of the body, really. So the hypothalamus is basically the the ANS regulator, and we're going to talk about ANS all day today, autonomic nervous system, okay? So hypothalamus is the main switch for the autonomic nervous system. So this is extremely important, okay? The cerebellum is important for voluntary movement. It's important for position, right? It gauges position. Nowadays, they're saying that the cerebellum is actually really important for learning, okay? Psychosomatic learning. The whole Montessori philosophy, okay? Cerebellum really agrees with that, right? The function of the cerebellum. And then we have the pons. The word pons means bridge. Pons has a lot of nuclei. I told you, respiratory and urinary functions, okay, to name a few. And then medulla. Medulla is really important. Cardiovascular nuclei, respiratory nuclei, blood pressure nuclei, they're all there, okay? So a lot happens, and a lot of things happen in the medulla, and a lot of nuclei there, which is why you have so much fat on your neck, to protect the medulla, okay? Most of your cranial nerves emerge out of there, so super important. Any questions on the brain? Again, I've really covered it very superficially, because we don't know much brain physiology, okay? We know a lot of brain anatomy, but that's where that will be covered in your anatomy class. So the anatomy schedule for the summer is finalized. It is going to be in person, Monday through Thursday. It's going to be a lab starting at 9:20, okay? And it starts at 9:20, lab goes till 10:55, and then lecture starts at 11:10 and goes till 12:45, and it's all in one room. It's all in 1405. Okay, so everything is there. So whoever's interested in taking that class, I'm teaching all of it in person, completely in person. And so it is lecture lab for 3 hours every day, Monday through Thursday. And it's an 8-week class, and you're done in 8 weeks. Okay?
Yes.
And the cancer class, which I did advertise as being online, I've decided to move it to person also. Okay, it's going to be in person, and that's going to be taught the same day from 1 to 2:35. Same room, 1405. Okay, so 1 to 2:35, and Cancer Bio doesn't have labs. So you have lecture, and then you go home. Okay, so whoever is interested. All right, and sign up early because high schoolers will grab these spots like no tomorrow. Okay, once that opens for them. All right, any questions on the brain? Everybody okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so the peripheral nervous system, there's a lot here, which I'm not covering because we're doing part of this in lab. So the peripheral nervous system is everything outside of the CNS. Okay, this is outside the central nervous system. Everything outside of it is called peripheral. Okay, and I will bring in some aspects of anatomy which are important for you to understand. Okay, so we have two branches of the peripheral nervous system. So we've got the somatic nervous system, and this is important. Okay, because the somatic nervous system, these neurons, okay, regulate skeletal muscle. And we'll learn how this happens in our next chapter. Okay, they regulate skeletal muscle. That's their main job. And skeletal muscle, you should know from your histology portion of the lab, that it controls voluntary strong forces, right? Right?
Yes.
So voluntary strong forces. Okay, that's what happens when nerves activate skeletal muscle. And remember, skeletal muscle is a prime example of temporal summation. Temporal summation, because there's only one neurotransmitter involved in all of skeletal muscle function. Only one, and that's acetylcholine. That's it, right? So somatic nervous system, it has only one neurotransmitter. So can spatial summation be possible? No, right? You're only having one neurotransmitter, right? And that's acetylcholine. Okay? Because acetylcholine is so important, okay, I want to quickly give you a side note. AChR, or acetylcholine receptors, are of two types, just to make our lives better. So these are of two types, okay? We've got nicotinic receptors, okay, and we've got muscarinic receptors. I can't spell. Muscarinic. Nicotine, everybody knows nicotine, correct?
Yes.
Cigarettes, e-cigarettes, whatever. So nicotinic, these are ion channels. So what mode is this? These are actually ion channels. So what mode is acetylcholine acting here? What are the two modes of neurotransmitter action? Look at your notes. What mode is ion channels? If the neurotransmitter opens ion channels directly, what is that mode called? Ion channels, right, John? So if it's potassium channels, then you don't excite, right? What is the mode of neurotransmitter action when the receptor itself is an ion channel? Direct acting, right? So nicotinic, good. Nicotinic is direct acting. Fast or slow?
Fast.
Fast, okay? Because this is direct acting. The word muscarine is a fungal toxin. It's a toxin found in mushrooms, okay? And what muscarine does, see, nicotine will prolong acetylcholine response, okay? And hopefully by the end of today, you will understand why smoking is so relaxing and addictive. Muscarine is actually an inhibition. It inhibits acetylcholine, okay? But muscarine acts by activating several proteins before you open ion channels. What mode is this?
Indirect.
Indirect, okay? So these are G protein coupled receptors. And the abbreviation for this is GPCRs. And G protein coupled receptors will undergo signal transduction, and this will cause cyclic, is very important, AMP or cyclic GMP to go up or down. It could be either one. It could go up or down. Remember, if it's excitatory, it goes up. If it's inhibitory, it comes down, usually. Okay, there are exceptions there too. But if you're curious, ATP gives rise to cyclic AMP, and GTP gives rise to cyclic GMP. Yeah.
Is it also okay to think about nicotinic as ionotropic and muscarinic as metabolic?
Yeah, but I'm not opening that can of worms.
No.
Okay, but yes, you can. So, because that leads to more complications, right? You've got chronotropic, and several classifications. I'm not going into all that. It's not necessary for what they need in nursing school.
Okay.
Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay, so these are just acetylcholine receptors. Are we clear?
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes.
Okay, so acetylcholine receptors are therefore called cholinergic receptors. They're called cholinergic. Cholinergic. Not once. Okay, she knows all this. Okay, so any questions on this? All right, so in skeletal muscle, and I need you to know this, in skeletal muscle, okay, the cholinergic receptors are 100% nicotinic. 100%, when something's 100%, you better write that down. In skeletal muscle, 100% of the cholinergic receptors are nicotinic. which means the action of acetylcholine in skeletal muscle is instant, correct? Look at me speaking, is it instant?
Fast.
Well, it's instant. As I'm thinking, I'm talking, right?
Yes.
Because acetylcholine is acting on nicotinic receptors. Are we clear? Okay, hope so. All right. So, again, I'll write that down. Oops. Skeletal muscle. Okay, and again, that's 100%. Okay, nicotinic receptors. So where does muscarinic come in? Muscarinic is really, really important in the autonomic nervous system. Okay, its main effects are in the autonomic nervous system. Are we clear? Okay, so again, this is just acetylcholine. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, we move on to the autonomic nervous system. So everything I said up to this point was in general peripheral nervous system, right? And we looked at somatic nervous system here, correct? Somatic, neurons controlling skeletal muscle, right? So this is all somatic, correct?
Yeah.
The somatic division of the peripheral nervous system. For the autonomic nervous system, autonomic means automatic, right?
Yes.
Autonomous. You've heard of the word autonomous?
Yes.
So that's where the word autonomic comes from. Self-regulating or self-turning on. I want to make a super duper important point clear. And I'm going to be saying this over and over and over till the cows come home. Autonomic nervous system is never completely off, never completely on. If the autonomic nervous system is at either extreme, where it's completely off or it's completely on, you'd be dead. Are we clear?
Yes.
So there has to be always, finish that sentence. There has to be always what?
On and off.
I just told you they're not on and off. If it's on and off, don't you think it's 100% off? No, it's not on and off. What am I saying? There is regulation, but that's too generic.
Baseline.
There's a baseline, thank you.
Baseline.
You have a baseline, right? In other words, you have a non-zero basal activity, correct? There's always some activity or another. It can go up and down, right? Yes? So if I have to draw this graphically, if I have to express this graphically, it's going to look like this. If this is 0, and this is your x-axis, this is the y-axis, right? Your autonomic is always going to be some baseline, right? And you can have a variety of responses, right? If you have a strong stimulus, you turn this on a little bit. If you have a weak stimulus, you turn this on a little bit. If you have a strong stimulus, you turn it on a lot. Yes?
Yes.
Somebody who is very well prepared for the exam is going to have this little peak in response to the exam, right? I mean, you're going to have some, right? Whereas a person who completely didn't even remember there was an exam that day, it's going to be, whoa, right? That. Okay? A little less morbid example. Someone who is very, very athletic is going to have this kind of a response when they run. And when I start walking, I get this. Right? That's what it is. Okay? So, there's always a baseline. And the scientific term, you will not believe this. The University of Colorado, Boulder, when they interviewed one of my students, she actually used this exact word in her interview. And they asked her what that meant, and she knew what that meant. They were so impressed with that they actually told me that we cannot believe your student knew this word, okay? So from then on, I always make sure I throw that word out, okay? Well, because it makes sense. This word is called tonic, T-O-N-I-C, tonic. So this kind of a non-zero basal activity is called a tonic activity, meaning it's never non-zero. So tonic means you're never zero or hitting the zero baseline. Are we clear? There's always some activity. Sympathetic and parasympathetic are always on. Do you understand? They're always on. But what can happen? One can dominate over the other. Make sense? I'll give you an example. Let's say you see a beautiful bun cake that smells so fresh and yummy, right?
Yes.
If I keep that bun cake here, right, and you're gonna walk towards me, you're like, oh my God, that bun cake is killing me, right? And you walk towards that cake. Somebody could be behind you with a knife. You're not gonna know. Why? Because you've just suppressed your sympathetic and you're up to your parasympathetic. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Correct? The same can be applied. No one here under 18? Anybody under? I had a 14-year-old once, and poor thing, lost all her innocence in my biology reproduction class. What am I going to do? I have to teach that class. That's the first and last time I ever taught it, because I was so flabbergasted that half the class was high school students, and my second chapter was anal sex. What am I supposed to do? That's the curriculum. That's what I'm supposed to teach. And that's when I required that class be made rated R, right? You cannot join unless you're 18, okay? And it was full of science. It was all science. I mean, the first chapter was sympathetic, parasympathetic responses in reproduction. That was the first chapter. And then people learned about plant reproduction in that class. So it's not all dirty talk with a license. So it was biology of reproduction. I truly taught it as a biology class. You learned about how worms reproduce, how plants reproduce, how we reproduce, and it all ended with evolution at the end, of course. Everything ends with evolution at the end. So the point is, so everyone over 18, okay. So the same thing happens during physical attraction. You're attracted towards somebody, right? If you're so attracted to that person, right, and you're walking towards that person, you're not going to be wary of any dangers because you're suppressing your sympathetic response. Are we clear?
Yes.
Your heart rate is being lowered. This is why sex is so beneficial to your heart. Okay, that's one reason. The second reason is when you orgasm, the oxytocin levels have the power, and this paper just came out last year. Oxytocin has the power to repair and regenerate your heart muscle. It's the only hormone that can regenerate your heart muscle. It's oxytocin. Guess what else you use your oxytocin for? Affection and lactation. This explains why mothers, and you don't have to be a birth mother, mothers live a lot longer than fathers. Because over time, they have much greater exposure to oxytocin. Because oxytocin is your affection hormone. It's also your orgasm hormone. It's also your labor hormone. It does all of them. How is that possible? When you're having sexual intercourse, you shouldn't be going through labor. Correct? Ouch. Right? It has to do with amount of hormone. Does that make sense? Orgasm has a different amount of hormone. Labor has a totally different amount of hormone. Milk letdown, totally different. And think about it, right? If you're undergoing labor, the last thing you want is milk letdown, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So the levels of the blood levels of the hormone determines what kind of response you get. It's a very important theme in this class because physiology can be super specific. Even though it's only one hormone, you can have huge variations based on how much of the hormone is getting out. Everybody see that? So with respect to the sympathetic parasympathetic response, typically so sexual intercourse is the only time these two systems work together. The fight and flight and rest and digest work together. And it's the only place where the parasympathetic is required for the sympathetic response. In both men and women, please don't forget, women go through orgasm too, right? Nature is a very fair lady, okay? Everything is equalized, okay? So women go through orgasm. In fact, if women don't go through orgasm, their chances of getting pregnant is slashed by 10-fold. People have measured this, okay? And in some species, mammalian species, if the female doesn't orgasm, she will not get pregnant at all. And in rats, I know this for a fact because I ran a rat colony for 8 years. If a female accidentally gets, because there's plenty of rape in rats. Rats rape all the time, right? When a rat goes through rape and she becomes pregnant, right? Within 18 hours, she'll abort her fetuses spontaneously. Okay, fine, you're stronger than me, you do what you want. Male rats are much bigger, okay? So they can overwhelm the female. And so when they become pregnant from a rape, they consciously, 100%, I'm not saying one incident here, one incident there. So what has happened to us? We have de-evolved. Females have a choice in nature. Okay, rats abort, instantly abort the next morning. It's physiological, they're not thinking about this. Do you understand what I'm saying? Instantly they abort, they hyperovulate, find a mate and get pregnant again. With a mate that they like. And if the male rapes her again, same male, and you can easily do these experiments, putting them in the same cage, right? If it's a male that turns her off again, it's the same male that she can't stand. I've seen a rat do this 12 times. 12 times, and she stops ovulating permanently. She goes, I'm not getting pregnant. Forget this. No, I'm serious. So, female mammals have a choice. Okay? They have a choice. Humans don't have this. Humans don't have this. We have lost that ability. Okay? Hello, evolution. This isn't creation moving forward. What advantage do we have? Our ovaries are disconnected from the fallopian tube. What kind of creation is this? Not a single mammal has that. Do you know this? Why would you disconnect that tube? The egg can fall into your bladder area. You want to lose your eggs? You have 50 eggs your whole life. You want to lose those eggs? Why don't both your ovaries work? Don't you think you should be doing that? Our uterus can hold multiple babies, right? Don't you think both ovaries should come down? This is what they teach in biology reproduction. We talk about all this. It shows a major step backwards. Okay, major step backwards. Same thing with the immune system. Major step backwards. We are not advanced at all. Okay, and with this broke-ass reproductive system, look at our population. Humans are amazing, aren't they? Anyway, my point being, what happens during sex? And this is why I said, you're all 18. And she doesn't have her daughter, right? Okay, good. What happens? I have to watch out. What happens during sex? Initially, right? You start out, right? You're attracted to something, right? That turns on your parasympathetic. Okay? That's exactly what Viagra does. And Viagra was meant to be heart medication to slow down your heart. What do you think parasympathetic does? Slows down your heart. Okay? An unfortunate side effect was it slows down your heart by moving blood into your genitals. Make sense? And then what happens is you have an erection, males and females. It's really important, males and females. So if you want to get pregnant, remember the female has to orgasm. If the female does not orgasm, okay, your chances of pregnancy is minimal because that's how nature intends it to be. Think about it, the female is going to bear this parasite for 9 months, not you. Okay? So nature wants her approval in this process. Because if she's going to be careless, there goes all that energy. Am I making sense? This is not okay. So female approval has to be there. And the female approval is the orgasm. Are we clear? That's the event. And when a female orgasms, the sperm gets pushed to the uterus in 6 minutes. It goes to the fallopian tube in 6 minutes. People have measured this. If the female does not orgasm, and people have measured this in comatose women, right? Female does not orgasm, okay? The time it takes, and they didn't use sperm, but they used seminal fluid that had radioactive tracers, right? To find out how long it takes 8 hours for that same sperm to travel up the reproductive tract. That's a long ass journey. Okay? So orgasm means you're flying through versus you're walking from here to New York. Does that make sense? So no way you're going to get pregnant because all your sperm will get killed. The female reproductive tract is the most unfriendly piece of land you'll ever find. Okay? Sperm are not welcome there. Okay? They will get beheaded one after another. So a man puts in 16 million sperm, forget it. Even with orgasm, you get only 100 sperm there to the fallopian tube. And if the woman doesn't like it, you will get 2 sperm at the fallopian tube, and that's it, the end. Okay? Chances of pregnancy, 0. Make sense? This is to ensure that the female is also involved in this act. Because metabolically, she has to put up with it. Okay? The benefit of passing on the genes to the next generation and making sure the next generation exists. Am I making sense here?
Yes.
In men, it's easy. Without orgasm, sperm doesn't come out. Am I making sense?
Yes.
But in the female, the egg coming out has nothing to do with her orgasm. So that's another disconnection. In rats and mice, those are connected. Okay? Sexual orgasm will make her ovulate. That part is lost. Okay? We're messed up. Okay? Human beings messed up. Are we clear? Reproductive system, big time mess up. Okay? Bottom line, what we are doing in terms of the sympathetic parasympathetic, you've noticed this, right? So through sexual intercourse, right? If anyone's a virgin, I'm sorry. If through sexual intercourse, you're going to learn this anyway in this class. So through sexual intercourse, what's going to happen is your heart rate starts going up. You start sweating. These are all sympathetic effects, right? But didn't I just say parasympathetic happens first, then sympathetic? What happens is parasympathetic turns on the sympathetic response. Are we clear? Parasympathetic is your erection. Erection in males and females, penis versus the clitoris, that's parasympathetic. That parasympathetic response will turn on the sympathetic nervous system. Are we clear? And sympathetic is what causes the climaxing. Okay? Where sperm is let out of the several miles of tubes in the male. And that's where the female releases acid neutralizing oil and acid neutralizing chemicals that will make the pathway for the sperm less unfriendly. There is no friendly ever. It's less unfriendly, that's all. We behead less sperm than we normally do. Is this making sense? Okay, so parasympathetic and sympathetic work together in the reproductive system. I will ask this next week, no wait. So parasympathetic, sympathetic work together. Everywhere else, they antagonize each other. That makes a lot of sense. If you want to up your heart rate, sympathetic goes up. But parasympathetic will bring it down. So what is antagonistic? So sympathetic, SNS, and parasympathetic, PSNS, are antagonistic. Okay? Except the gonads. I shouldn't say gonads, I'm sorry, that's not correct. Genitals. Genitals are not gonads. Okay? Gonads, as far as I know, don't have these receptors. Okay? So, genitals, this is where they act together, one after another. They act sequentially. Okay? And many, many organs, so many organs, and so this is called a dual innervation. Okay? Very important. It's called dual. Dual means two, right? Many organs are dually innervated. In fact, most organs are dually innervated, right? They have both sympathetic and parasympathetic. That's what that means. So both PSNS and SNS. And I told you this, right? SNS are my initials. I'm scary. I get your heart rate up. Yes, one of my high schoolers told me that before the reproduction chapter. And then he's not. Okay, thankfully. So the point is, sympathetic nervous system gets your heart rate up, gets your blood pressure up, gets your eyes to dilate, right? You've seen deer in headlights? Everybody?
Yes.
That's a classic sympathetic response. Okay? Scary situations, right? So sympathetic functionally, so SNS is fight or flight response. Fight, flight, fright, and I should say fright dominates It does. Being scared is a lot more common than fighting with someone or trying to fly, right? In fact, flight comes after fright. Okay? Once you get scared, you run away, right? Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and of course, the fourth F is fornicate. Okay, to say it in a euphemistic way. But I'm going to leave that out of this equation because it's such a very specialized function. Parasympathetic is rest, digest, and erect. Think about it. No animal is going to erect their clitoris or your penis if you're scared. Okay? This is also why young dogs, right, even when they see food, right, they have an erection. They have erections all the time. And even older dogs, when you're petting them all the time, right, that does not mean they're sexually attracted to you, okay? That just means that the parasympathetic pathways or the circuitry is crossed. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. So they're feeling so relaxed that they're turning on their erection system, okay? It's not intentional. This is also why dogs love their walks, because when they walk, right, they smell the other female's hormones, right? And it gets them to erect. But part of erection is what? Parasympathetic. Mm-hmm. Parasympathetic relaxes them. That's why after a nice walk, they fall flat and take a long 4-hour nap. Okay? It's because of parasympathetic response. Are we clear?
Yes.
Connect these things. This is very, very real life. Okay? Very real life. So is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to quickly discuss with you a little bit of the anatomy, and this is something you do need to know. It is important. Okay. If you look at the parasympathetic response, so if you look at the sympathetic response first. So if you look at the sympathetic response, so what you have is, here's your spinal cord. Okay. So this is the spinal cord. Okay. And you have neurons, okay, that are in the spinal cord that will synapse, okay, with what's called, okay, and I'm going to draw this in this light orange, the ganglion, okay, because remember, what's a ganglion? It is a group of cell bodies outside the CNS, right? If you're outside the spinal cord, are you outside the CNS? Yes. CNS is spinal cord, right? If you're outside of it, you're outside the CNS. So this is a ganglion, okay? So this is called a ganglion. It's an ANS ganglion, okay? And you will notice that this will synapse with some kind of a target organ. And if you think about the heart, the neuron has to come all the way around to your heart, correct? It's a very long neuron, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a very short neuron, correct? So the name of this is preganglionic, and this is postganglionic. The names should make a lot of sense, yes?
Yes.
Pre and post. So the preganglionic, okay, I'll color code this. So the preganglionic neuron releases acetylcholine. Very, very important, okay? And the postganglionic, okay, I'm almost positive that the postganglionic, think about it, this is a scary situation, correct?
Yeah.
Sympathetic means turning on the alarm. Should you wait for the alarm? Should you wait to turn on an alarm?
No.
Under any 911 situation, should you wait?
No.
No. So what kind of receptors would you want here? What type of cholinergic receptors will you find on the postganglionic neural cell body?
Nicotinic.
Nicotinic. Good. You will find nicotinic receptors. So postganglionic, okay, cell body expresses nicotinic receptors because you want an instant nicotinic cholinergic receptors, right? And what happens is the post-ganglionic, okay, the post-ganglionic, now remember, it's going to be excitatory here, correct? Otherwise, don't you want it, okay, you have a 911 situation. The fire alarm is normally off, correct? Your sympathetic here is normally off, right? So what do you want to do? You want to turn it on, right?
Yes.
Would it be excitatory or inhibitory?
Excitatory.
Excitatory, has to be. Plus it's only one neurotransmitter, right? Has to be excitatory. Inhibitory is not even defined here because you're not doing spatial summation. Do you understand?
Yes.
So question on the exam. Which of the following will not occur at an ANS ganglion? Spatial summation. When will spatial summation occur? When you have 100 different neurons synapsing onto one thing, correct?
Yes.
Do you have 100 different neurons synapsing onto one thing?
No.
Do you have the luxury to be adding all the signals?
No.
It's a 911 call. Get on it. Okay? So post-ganglionic, so this is a temporal summation, by the way. So post-ganglionic neuron is long, which means it's going to be myelinated, correct?
Yes.
And releases norepinephrine as its neurotransmitter. Norepinephrine, very, very important. It releases norepinephrine. Okay. Now the adrenal medulla, okay, the adrenal medulla is called an island ganglion. Adrenal, ad means on top of, renal means kidney. It's on top of the kidney. It's a little triangular organ. So adrenal medulla is an island ganglion. Okay, and when activated by postganglionic sympathetic neurons, okay, it releases epinephrine or adrenaline, adrenal adrenaline, okay. Adrenaline and epinephrine are the same thing. Epinephrine is a more scientific name. You've heard of EpiPens, right? That's what that is, epinephrine. Nephros means kidney. Epi means on top of, you know this, epithelial, right? Epi means on top of. So epinephrine is a Greek word, adrenaline is a Latin word, that's all. Okay? Otherwise they mean the same thing. So what's the difference between epinephrine and norepinephrine? Nor means not, N-O-T. So it's like saying, this is truly the stupid. I am Sean and you're not Sean. Look at how lazy the naming is. Right? This is literally how they named it. This is epinephrine, this is not epinephrine. That's what norepinephrine means. That took me a month to figure out. Because I could not believe somebody would be that lazy. And they were. Okay? So norepinephrine and epinephrine have the same effects. Are we clear?
Yes.
But they're chemically different. Norepinephrine has an extra methyl group and epinephrine doesn't. Otherwise, they're the same thing. Are we clear? Norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter, which means it's released by neurons. Epinephrine is a hormone. It's released into blood. Are we clear?
Yes.
So that's the major difference. Okay? But they're both sympathetic, meaning will both of them increase heart rate? Yes.
Yes.
Okay? They both produce sympathetic effects. Are we clear?
Yes.
Now, what happens with parasympathetic? What color did I use? Green, light green. Okay. So parasympathetic, this is what happens. Okay. So again, you have, so by the way, before I move away from sympathetic, I did want to mention that, bless you. So sympathetic ganglia are arranged as paravertebral chain ganglia, and I'll draw this for you. Okay, they're arranged as paravertebral chain ganglia. So if this is your spinal cord, so if this is the brain, and this is the spinal cord, okay? Slightly deformed brain. So the paravertebral ganglia are here. Let me use the same color code. So you've got this, connected to 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 this. So they're all connected. Are we clear?
Mm-hmm.
So these are called chain ganglia. Why? Because when one gets turned on, they all get turned on. But why are you putting it near the spinal cord? Because spinal cord receives most of your reflexes. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, reflex is your 911 call. Are we clear?
Yes.
So strategically, it makes sense to put the sympathetic ganglia around the spinal cord. Okay? And this is called thoracolumbar outflow. So SNS has a thoracolumbar outflow. So the preganglionic is short because you're right next to the spinal cord, and the postganglionic is long. Everybody understands why now.
Yes.
I'll let you digest. Parasympathetic is exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. It has a long preganglionic because it originates in the brain. Makes sense. Don't you think you need to recognize what's restful and safe? Can you rest if you don't feel safe?
No.
No, which means brain has to be involved. What recognizes something as safe or non-safe? Brain. Hello, good morning, brain.
Yes.
For you to identify that you're safe. If you don't feel safe, okay, you're not going to do a lot of things, right? You're not going to be resting. You're not going to be digesting. Okay? Most certainly, you're not going to have an erection when you don't feel safe. That's another way humans have deviated. Okay? Because people do have the getting scared fetish. I'm serious. It's real. It's physiological. It's not some mumbo jumbo. Okay? Paranormal preferences are absolutely physiological. It has to do with the neural circuitry. Okay? In some people, getting scared turns them on. Okay? Just like how in some people, choking turns them on. Right? These are real. These are things, right? You have to face them. You can't go, oh, I can't believe it. I'm not doing, prayer here. We're teaching science. It's all part of science. It all has to do with circuitry. It all has to do with circuitry. Same for feet fetish and nose fetish and ear fetish and all the fetishes, right? They all have to do with circuitry, right? It all has to do with circuitry. And many times it's actually random. There's no rhyme or reason to this, right? So bottom line, the parasympathetic, and think about erection, it makes a lot of sense. Unless you recognize something to be a quote-unquote turn on, you don't get an erection. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So what that means is parasympathetic, you're looking at a bun cake and you start salivating at it, right? That's a parasympathetic response, right? Your body starts releasing insulin. That's a parasympathetic response, right? Because you're anticipating this bun cake to go in and you're going to anticipate a spike in blood sugar, right? All kinds of responses, right? You start drooling. You do the same thing when you see an attractive person. You start drooling. Have you ever thought why the same response? Because your saliva contains, especially men, contains a ton of androgens. And men salivate a lot more than women for that reason. And that's the physiology of kissing. They're transferring androgens. And androgens turn on the libido in males and females. Maybe I should teach the reproduction class. A lot of fun. A lot of physiology. It's really a lot of fun there. Okay. Bottom line, the parasympathetic, and then I'll give you guys a break. So the parasympathetic, okay, this is rest and digest. And what you have here is again, brain. So this is a craniosacral outflow. So does the spinal cord have an input? Yes, at the sacral end, okay? Near the butt. Okay, that's the only place the spinal cord participates with parasympathetic. Are we clear? So do you see how anatomically the divisions are separated, right? One's thoracolumbar, and then one's the other extreme, right? cranial on the head, sacral, correct?
Yeah.
So here you have, okay, so here you have, going the wrong direction, okay, so like that, right? So you've got, okay, craniosacral output, that's parasympathetic. Do you see how the ganglia are separated? You don't have a common ganglion for both, because that could be super confusing. Are we clear? Which is why you don't have spatial summation. You have to apply what you've learned. That's why you don't have spatial summation. Okay? So didn't understand it, make a note, think about it at home. It'll make sense. Okay? These are mutually exclusive systems, right? You should not put them together in the same ganglion. It could be very confusing. Okay? And I'll tell you that right now. So here's your, so again, the ganglion, okay, so the ganglia are found near the target. And a lot of people think that the sympathetic is the dominant one. It's not. Parasympathetic is the dominant one. Think about it. If you're evolving, do you want sympathetic or something that you act in haste? You want that to be overriding something? No. Parasympathetic overrides sympathetic all the time. Somebody hears really bad news or really good news. What do?
Sad.
Your heart starts racing, correct?
Yes.
And then what do?
That.
Don't say die. Not die. We want to live. What do?
React
Collapse.
to the bad news.
What's that? I can't charade more than this. Faint. Fainting is a parasympathetic response. Fainting is a parasympathetic response. Why do you faint? Because sympathetic is pumping your heart faster, 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 faster. The brain puts a brake on it, saying, the heart's going to explode. Stop. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Second example. Anytime babies start getting annoyed, they're in pain or they're in hunger or whatever, right? They're annoyed, right? What do? Cry. Crying. Crying is what? Crying is also parasympathetic. How many of you have had a good cry? Come on, be honest. Definitely me. I've had a good cry. Every time I grade. Okay? When you have a good cry, you feel good. In fact, it makes you go to sleep. Right?
Yes.
That's crying. That's because crying is a parasympathetic response. Okay? How many of you, to babies, you've done this? Do you know doing this, you can ward off heart disease for at least 2 years? If you do this 5 minutes a day, the longer you do it, the better it is for your heart. Okay, they showed this in dogs. Okay, it extends their life by another 6 months or a year. And when you do this when you do this to rats, it extends their life by 2 years. Remember, their whole life is 2 years, so their life actually doubles when you pet them. Mice don't do this. Mice don't like it at all when you pet them. They bite you. I told you those creatures need to be terminated from the planet. Evolution, take note. So, but in humans, you've done this to babies, right?
Yes.
Oh, stop crying, it's okay, it's okay. So it works in adults too, because there's a reflex here that's parasympathetic. The vagal nerves, okay, the sensory portion of the vagal nerves will take this to the brain and bring it down the efferent vagal nerves, okay, and slow down your heart. You can easily do this for 5 minutes and measure your heart rate. It would have gone down. Make sense? So what is my point? I know I had a point. I'm asking myself, what is my point? Okay, so what this means, the point I'm trying to make is that cannot happen if the ganglia are away from the target organ. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
And plus, you need a recognition concept to this, right? So why would you want parasympathetic in the sacral area? For two functions, really. Okay, two functions. Urination and reproduction. Okay, otherwise, the spinal cord cannot do any recognition, right? It doesn't have cognitive ability as far as we know. It cannot. It doesn't. Okay, So the craniosacral outflow is very, very specific, right, for these two functions. Are we clear? So, to draw this, this is what it looks like. So you have the preganglionic, which is huge, right? And then you have the ganglion. Okay, there's the ganglion. And the postganglionic, okay, drawn in blue. The postganglionic is super short, and it's near the target. Now this one's interesting. The preganglionic releases acetylcholine, and the postganglionic also releases acetylcholine. Now do you see why acetylcholine is so important and in a class of its own? It's all acetylcholine here. But what's different? What is different is this, okay? It is nicotinic here, and it is muscarinic here. That's why, so tell me, why would it be an advantage for acetylcholine to be muscarinic in its target? Hint, heart. Why would, so muscarinic means what? Indirect. Indirect means what?
Slow.
Slow. Why do you want this system to be slow in the heart? When you put the brakes on your car, do you want to do it slowly or harshly?
Slowly.
Exactly, you'll damage the heart. Am I making sense? So you want this to be slow, and guess which ion it uses? There you go. Oh, I'm getting all brain tingles. Maybe I should have brain gasms. When you put things like this together, something happening at an organismal level, if you can explain it on an atomic level, don't you think that's amazing?
Yes.
Right? You want everything to be slow, you use potassium. Of course you use potassium. Make sense?
Yeah.
In fact, in the heart, it not only turns on potassium, it shuts off sodium. It does both. Okay, in the pacemaker, to slow it down. Are we clear?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you guys to take a 5-minute break, and then when you come back, I want to describe some of the effects of sympathetic, parasympathetic, and with that, nervous system is done. Don't miss class on Thursday. I'm going to be doing a full-on review. Okay, we're supposed to start muscle on Thursday, but I don't care. I'm going to do a full-on review for the lecture exam because it's a lot of material. So I'm going to post a review sheet. Everybody saw the review video for the lab?
Yes.
How many of you watched it? Well, most of the Tuesday class. Thursday class is still sitting on their butts. They're like, oh, I'll watch it Thursday morning. Good for you. So please use these resources, okay? I will record the Thursday, well, actually you guys can record the Thursday session yourselves. Because if I record it, I have to caption it. I'm not doing that. So you can record it yourself, I'll do the review for you, okay? We'll do that. Okay?
Yes.
So, quick 3-minute break since I'm yapping. And then we'll start the effects and then you're free to go. Okay? So go ahead, take a break. Okay? I'm gonna list a few specific organs, right? And we're going to be looking at some of these effects, right? So the very first one we're going to do is the heart. Okay, the heart is very much affected by this, right? So I'm going to say heart rate. Okay, we know sympathetic is fight or flight. It needs to pump a lot more blood to your muscles and to the brain so you can judge your danger, right? Remember, you're in danger, right? So heart rate must increase. Okay? We'll do all the sympathetic, we'll come to the parasympathetic next. Okay? So heart rate. Pupil diameter. In the sympathetic response, now, so understand that typically when you're scared, okay, this one's a complicated response. So I'm going to, I'm going to sort of generalize this, okay? So take this with a grain of salt, right? So pupil diameter typically purely due to sympathetic. Now remember, pupil diameter is controlled by many things, okay? But if you're taking only the sympathetic system, you want to increase the diameter because you want to let more light in so you can judge what's going on around you. Yes? This is
Yes.
also why your eyes go wide when you're scared, right? To make sure you are able to look all over. Okay, that's pupil diameter. Then, again, some of the obvious ones. So, glycogen breakdown in the liver. But in general, just glycogen breakdown. You want to, glycogen is a glucose storage molecule, right? Do you want more energy if you're in a dangerous situation? Yes, right? So glycogen breakdown will increase. Okay, and I'll make your life simple. There's no effect by the parasympathetic. Okay, there's no effect by the you do not make glycogen when you're relaxing. That doesn't make any, it's an insulin response. It's not parasympathetic. Are we clear?
Yes.
So no effect there. Okay, back to what else? Back to bronchial diameter. Bronchioles are your airways in the lung. Bronchioles are your airways. Do you want more oxygen?
Yes.
Yes. So what are you going to do to bronchial diameter?
Increase.
Increase. Okay. Blood vessel. Now this one's interesting. So this one's complicated, but I'll go over this in more detail when we do the cardiovascular system, because some vessels actually dilate in response to epinephrine, okay, and majority of them do constrict, so decrease. You vasoconstrict, okay. So blood vessel diameter, you will vasoconstrict in response to the sympathetic nervous system, because that pushes blood further towards the heart, right? And you want that, right? You want to take blood from the digestive system and the skin. That's why when you're scared, you go white in the face, because blood is drawn away from the periphery, right? So maybe I should say peripheral blood vessel diameter will decrease, okay? Blood is pushed towards the heart. And parasympathetic, no response. Parasympathetic does not control blood vessels. Okay, so these are all single innervation, right? So anytime I put a dash, that's a single innervation. Everything else is a dual innervation, most likely the opposite effect. Okay. So next, digestive secretions, and that includes saliva. So many times when you wake up from a nightmare, you wake up with your mouth dry. Okay, because blood is taken away from the salivary glands to the heart, right? So you can't make saliva, so your mouth goes dry. And this is why people offer you water, right? Because when you drink the water, that reactivates the parasympathetic and suppresses the sympathetic. Okay, so digestive secretions, you will decrease. Okay. What other effects am I forgetting? These are the most important. Oh yeah, micturition or peeing. Okay, micturition means peeing. You will decrease it. In fact, you will stop it. Okay. Last thing you want to do is stop. And in a lot of animals, they have to get the penis out of their bone and then pee. If you're in a dangerous situation, that's the last thing you want to do. Correct? Because the penis is extremely vascularized, and most animals know that one bite at the penis will kill the animal. Okay? It's the easiest way to kill the animal. Okay? Because the bleeding will never stop. Make sense? So that's why they've evolved a bone. Okay? They hide the penis inside their bone. Humans have lost that bone. Okay? Now how stupid are you? Right? Why would you do that? You lost a protective mechanism. So anyway, so micturition is inhibited. You don't want to pee. Okay? I had a high school student tell me, well, you shouldn't pee when you're scared and running away from a lion, because you could slip and fall and the lion will catch you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. He's the cardiologist now. So, and I still tease him about it. And the guy who had to sit like this. So, yeah, no, that's not why. Because no animal will pee to begin with, right? It's not because they'll slip and fall. Peeing requires you to feel safe, right? That's why when you go pee, and come out, men and women, you go, right?
Yes.
That's a parasympathetic response, right? You don't want to pee unless you feel safe. Yeah, the animal can smell your pee and locate you, right? Not a good idea. It's not that you're going to slip and fall and it'll catch you. Okay? That doesn't happen in the forest, okay? So, and you're not peeing like a buffalo anyway. So this is pretty much it. And of course, in the genitals, okay, your response is really weird because here you have ejaculation. Okay? And so the parasympathetic responses, this would be erection. There's a mind concept to this, and even in animals, right? Particularly in animals, they smell and they choose their partner, right?
Yes.
Birds see all the color and they choose their partner, right? So there's a judgment call involved. Do you agree?
Yes.
In reproduction. So that automatically means parasympathetic, craniosacral, right?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Micturition, you will increase micturition because you're feeling safe. Okay. Digestive, you will increase digestive, obviously. Bronchial diameter, you will decrease it. Think about it. When you're falling asleep or you're sitting on a couch binge watching like I do, what the heck do you need oxygen for? You need oxygen to binge watch? So your breaths are very, very shallow, correct?
Yes.
When your breaths are really shallow, you retain a lot of carbon dioxide, correct? What does carbon dioxide do? When you do this over months at a time?
Or you just sleep.
Well, it puts you to sleep, but even more importantly, it starts getting converted to fat. Carbon dioxide is the start point for fat. So if you want to lose weight sustainably, start deep breathing, right? 10 to 20 deep breaths. I'm not part of Deep Breathing Association that's giving me a commission. Saying this for your own health, it's free, right? So deep breathe every hour. Deep breathe 5 times. It's not that hard to do, right? And you will lose 3 to 4 pounds every month. If you do it conscientiously, even more, okay? And you'll make your blood all the more alkaline. Didn't I give all this blah during lab? Yeah, there you go. Someone goes, what lab? Lab exam one's over. I don't remember all that. So, what does pupil diameter do? When you go to sleep, when you're binge watching, you need pupils to dilate?
No.
Abby goes, yes. I need it to dilate. I can watch everything. Are you awake, boy?
Yeah.
So pupil diameter decrease. One day he's going to assassinate. I can see him dialing 1-800, dial a harpoon. Okay, heart rate, what happens?
Rest.
Obvious.
Decrease.
Decreases. That's why you have to calm down. And when you take a deep breath, it causes your brain waves to calm down. We didn't do that with EEG. I'm going to do that next semester with the next class. But when you deep breathe, your brain waves, alpha waves become a lot bigger, beta waves become a lot smaller. Okay?
Yes.
Calms you down. That's why I tell you to do that during my exams. Okay, people did okay on the Tuesday exam, by the way. It's not too bad. It's not as bad as last semester. Let me put it that way. Any other questions? I have office hours tonight. Feel free to come. I have the review out for you. I will have the review sheet out for you hopefully tomorrow. And I will see you all Thursday during lab exam, 11:15, 11:15, and I'll see all of you in lectures.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Have a wonderful Wednesday.
Thank you.